The accountant in your mind records everything, and that's why you can't live freely. You believe the accountant works for you. It does not. You work for the accountant. Every morning, the accountant wakes before you. You haven't opened your eyes. He has already begun. You are 29. You still don't have this. Remember what happened 3 years ago. Remember that girl. Remember your success. Remember your failure. Remember how people see you. He is not interested in today. He is interested in the records. The accountant believes that life is something to be accumulated. Experiences, money, titles, knowledge, failures, travel, relationships, recognition. He keeps a perfect ledger. Every page answers one question: who am I? That is his only job. The tragedy is this: life never asks to be recorded. A flower blooms, it asks for nothing. A bird flies, it leaves no resume. The ocean does not count its waves, only man keeps accounts. You think you are carrying memories? No, the memories are carrying you. Every insult is still open, every compliment is still open, every achievement is still open, every heartbreak is still open. The accountant never closes the books. And because the books are never closed, you never arrive fresh. You walk into every room carrying yesterday. When someone criticizes you, it isn't today's criticism, it joins 30 years of criticism. When someone praises you, it joins 30 years of praise. Nothing is new, everything becomes another entry. You ask why you cannot live freely. Because freedom belongs only to someone who has nothing to defend. The accountant has everything to defend: his intelligence, his reputation, his body, his success, his failures, his story, his image, his future, his past. He is constantly protecting a person who exists only in his own records. Look carefully. You don't fear failure. The accountant fears a bad entry. You don't crave success. The accountant craves another good entry. You don't fear rejection. The accountant fears what it will write in the ledger. Imagine this: you are watching a sunset. Life says, look. The accountant says, remember this. Life says, feel it. The accountant says, take a picture. Life says, be here. The accountant says, this will make a wonderful story. By the time he finishes writing, the sunset is gone. You call it memory. I might call it psychological residue. Yesterday refuses to die, so today never gets to be born. The accountant has convinced you that your life is your story. It is not. Your story is merely the accountant's version of events. Life existed long before he began writing. Life will exist long after the notebook is burned. One day, if the accountant became silent, something extraordinary would happen. You would fail, and there would be no I am a failure. You would succeed, and there would be no I am successful. You would love without possessing. You would lose without becoming broken. You would walk through Times Square, and when you left, Times Square would leave with you. Nothing would need to be carried. Nothing would become identity. Nothing would become psychological weight. The accountant believes that freedom comes from having a perfect ledger. Freedom begins the moment the ledger no longer matters. Or perhaps even more quietly, life was never asking to be remembered. It was only asking to be lived. The accountant is the one who keeps your identity alive. There is a man inside you. He carries a notebook. Every minute of every day, he writes, I succeeded. I failed. She rejected me. They admired me. I had traveled to New York. I have six-pack abs. I have no job. I have a startup. I have read 100 books. He never stops writing. Now ask yourself, who asked him to keep records? The accountant never experiences life. The accountant only records life. Imagine watching a sunset. The accountant whispers, take a photo, post it. This is my 12th country. People back home haven't seen this. This will make a good story. The sunset is gone, only the record remains. The accountant has stolen the experience. The accountant turns everything into identity. Nothing is allowed to simply happen. Everything becomes I. Not I failed, but I am a failure. Not I earned money, but I am successful. Not I lost my job, but who am I without a job? The event ended. The accountant never lets it end. He stores it forever. Why does he keep records? Because he is terrified without the notebook. Who are you? If you remove your own gym progress, your startup, your relationships, your money, your failures, your victories, your travels, your followers. What remains? The accountant fears that question, so he keeps adding pages. The invisible psychological bag. You used a beautiful phrase. Imagine climbing a mountain. One person carries water, the other carries childhood prize, school marks, heartbreak, promotions, LinkedIn titles, Times Square photos, New York memories, failures, compliments, insults, validation. Which climb is heavier? The mountain isn't heavy, the bag is. Life isn't exhausting, the accountant is. Why can't you work freely? Because the accountant is always calculating. When you speak in a sales call, he asks, will this make me look smart? When you write, will people admire this? When you start a company, if this fails, what will people think? When you enter a gym, am I bigger than him? When you travel, is this more impressive than my friend's trip? He's never doing the work. He is protecting the identity. Real work disappears. Only image management remains. The accountant compares everything. He cannot exist without comparison. He says, I've read more, I've earned less, I'm behind, I'm ahead, I'm older, I'm younger, I'm richer, I'm poorer. Comparison is his oxygen. Without comparison, the accountant dies. Why does freedom disappear? Because every action has a hidden motive. You are no longer writing, you are becoming a writer. You are no longer exercising, you are becoming a fit person. You are no longer learning sales, you are becoming someone respected. The work is lost, only the identity survives. So I might ask you one devastating question. If tomorrow every human being disappeared, no audience, no Instagram, no LinkedIn, no family, no applause, no criticism, no comparison, would you still do this work? If the answer is yes, the accountant has gone silent. If the answer is no, you are never doing the work. You are feeding the notebook. The greatest illusion. The accountant promises safety. He says, keep records, they'll protect you. But every record becomes another chain. Success becomes pressure, failure becomes fear, experience becomes ego, knowledge becomes superiority, travel becomes status, relationships become identity. Nothing is allowed to die, everything is carried. What happens when the accountant disappears? Nothing magical, you simply become available to life. You fail, and 5 minutes later, it is over. You succeed, and 5 minutes later, it is over. You visit Times Square, you enjoy it, then you come home. No story, no superiority, no psychological profit, no identity, just an experience that came and went. I am pointing toward a life where memory is used only when it is functionally useful. If remembering how to drive, perform your job, or solve a technical problem helps, memory serves you. But when memory is constantly recruited to answer, who am I? It becomes the accountant's ledger. The heavier that ledger grows, the less directly you meet the present moment. The irony is that the accountant believes he is preserving your life. In many cases, he is preserving only a story about your life, while the life itself passes by unnoticed. You think the accountant is recording the past. Look more carefully. The accountant is deciding your future. That is the deception. Every action you are about to take, the accountant interrupts. Before you send the email, he calculates, what if they reject you? Before you start the company, he calculates, what if you fail again? Before you speak to someone, he calculates, will you sound intelligent? Before you post your writing, he calculates, how many people will approve? Before you ask for a promotion, he calculates, what if they say no? You think you are making decisions, you are not. The accountant has already run the numbers. The accountant does not love truth, he loves certainty. He asks only one question, will this improve my ledger? Not, is this worth doing? Not, is this true? Not, am I curious? Only, how will this look on my balance sheet? This is why you become paralyzed, not because the action is difficult, because the accountant cannot tolerate a negative entry. He would rather you do nothing. Then risk rating failed. So he disguises fear as intelligence. He calls it being practical, waiting, timing, preparation, thinking. No, it is accounting. The accountant is a terrible investor. He values certainty over possibility. Life rewards possibility. The accountant rewards safety. And that is why people slowly stop living. Look at a child. A child falls, gets up, falls again, laughs. There is no accountant, no ledger, no permanent record. Failure disappears the moment it happens. That is why children learn so quickly. Now look at an adult. One failure becomes an identity. I am bad at business. I am bad at relationships. I am not confident. One sentence written 20 years ago, still controlling today's decisions. The event ended. The accounting never did. Do you know why the accountant remembers every embarrassment? Because he believes memory protects you. He says, don't do that again. Remember what happened. But life is never the same twice. The accountant prepares you for a world that no longer exists. He is using yesterday's numbers to make today's decisions. The greatest prison is not failure, it is anticipated failure. You haven't even acted, yet you've already suffered the consequences in your imagination. The accountant has simulated the loss, so you never move. I might say something devastating here. You do not fear failure. You fear the accountant writing failure in permanent ink. The event lasts a day. The accountant keeps it alive for 30 years. The irony? The accountant believes he is protecting your life. In reality, he is protecting your image. Life is willing to lose. The accountant never is. Life says go. The accountant says calculate. Life says discover. The accountant says predict. Life says risk. The accountant says preserve. And so nothing new enters your life because nothing new can be predicted. Perhaps the deepest illusion is this. The accountant tells you that if you calculate enough, one day you will finally be free to live. But that day never comes because the accountant's work is never finished. There is always one more risk to avoid, one more reputation to protect, one more mistake to prevent, one more comparison to make, one more entry to record. He promises freedom tomorrow while quietly stealing today. I might end with this. The accountant has one obsession, never lose. Life has one invitation, live. You cannot do both. That is the trap. Not failure, not success. The trap is allowing the accountant to become the author of your actions instead of merely a keeper of records. When the accountant becomes the decision maker, your life is no longer lived, it is audited. One day, you will realize that the heaviest thing you have ever carried was not your failures, your heartbreaks, or your responsibilities. It was the accountant, the one who recorded every victory, every rejection, every insult, every compliment, every comparison, every fear. He called it wisdom, he called it preparation, he called it experience. But all he really did was convince you that life was something to be accounted for. Life was never asking for an accountant, it was only asking to be lived. The accountant promises safety. Let me calculate a little longer, he says. Let me protect you from one more mistake. And while he keeps perfect records, life quietly slips away. The tragedy is not that you failed. The tragedy is that you never stopped accounting long enough to live. Freedom does not arrive when your ledger is full of victories. Freedom arrives when the ledger no longer decides whether you move. The accountant will always have another calculation. Life never needed one. Fire the accountant. Let failure happen. Let success happen. Let praise come. Let criticism come. Let yesterday die. The moment every experience stops becoming an entry in your ledger, life begins. The accountant spent a lifetime keeping score. Life was never a game, it was the field itself. The accountant spent your entire life trying to protect your story. In doing so, he quietly prevented you from living your life.